So I think it's really starting to look like San Francisco now. The hills surrounding downtown in particular just look really cool. And as of the last episode, we started building the Presidio, which has been a lot of fun. There's heaps going on in here, and in this episode we're going to carry on building this, along the coast in particular. So when we switch to the top view, we can see how big the Presidio is. It's massive, the area that takes us up, and it's not bang on, but this gives us a good idea of the size of the area, the total area that we're working with. So let's not muck about, let's zoom straight in and get to work on this coast here. Oh, and by the way, welcome to the video. I've changed up the commentary for the intro a little bit, so I hope you guys are doing well. But we're basically just going to get straight into the building here, and the first thing I want to do is create a little beach here. This is an area called Chrissy Park, and there is a really nice mellow sort of a golden sand beach here. So I think I used the slope function on the terrain editing tool to create that nice mellow beach, and then I can run a road through here, and this is going to go around the edge of Chrissy Park, and it's quite iconic, the shape of it. It's got this sort of a horse track vibe to it with these big sweeping ends. And of course, it's also got a lot of walking tracks going through this area and down onto the beach, and also along the beach. In terms of the architecture down here, not much changes from what we were putting in the last episode. A lot of them have that Spanish influence, although there is a unique building in this area that I spotted, and it looked like an old hangar. And from the little wee bit of research that I did, it looked like this Crissy Field Park used to be an old airstrip or airfield of some sorts. And the hangars are still here, and they're being used for various reasons now, or various purposes. And they were a little bit tricky to make in-game, because obviously I couldn't use a real hangar. It's massive, it's far too big to put in here. So what I've done is just used a modular factory, turned it to procedural objects, and then manipulated the shape a little bit better to fit here. They are definitely not as good as an actual hangar, but they still, I think, work as a replacement. Next you'll see me wind a very pointless road up the hill that I delete later on. So now we can push on and finish the rest of the area. And it's pretty easy to finish off really. We place in a few more small buildings. I put in a few more like trees and stuff and scrub around the place, a car park, and Crissy Field has this like quite unique pattern looking at it on Google Earth to the grass, so I look to try and add something to that sort of effect. It looks as though in real life there's a lot of marshlands around this area, and it looks like there's like active plans to make or create more in future in order to create habitats for wildlife down here, which I think is really cool. And I wanted to try and include something like that down here, not just what's there now but also what they may include in future. And of course we're working with limited space here, which is a reoccurring theme, so we're just going to focus on putting like one little river slash marshland in here that's sort of running off from this area. So I want to also try and create a little bit of a feature out of this. So one of our walkways goes over it, we've got a road that goes through a pretty cool old school tunnel type of thing. Then we can introduce some like grass and just some beautiful nature around it. And in terms of what they may introduce in future, I've decided to put like a raised walkway that comes down this hill here, and maybe this hill is the sanctuary in real life for some of the wildlife. There's long grass here that they can nest in and things like that, and this walkway may cut through an area that doesn't disturb them too much but gives us a nice view of it. It is, however, as you can see, right by the highway, so I want to introduce like a thick hedge line along where it meets that to try and create obviously like a windbreak or something, or probably a sound barrier more likely. And then the next part is the easy part, and definitely my favourite, and that's putting in all these lovely trees here from the likes of Paldemo and Mr. Mason. Where would we be without Mr. Mason? I also want to make sure I get some grass in here obviously because it's our habitat area, and it's probably more than likely still marshland around here as well. And oh, while I remember, you guys might also notice that I've changed the LUT a little bit. I've actually changed far more than just the LUT. I've also got reshade and stuff like that now, so if you notice a difference, that's why. You may also notice that I'm not very good with it yet, so if you've got any tips, please enlighten me. So as we come up to the top of the hill here, this is right on top of the tunnel, which is quite unique, and the one thing that this area is probably going to need is a separate car park for people that are coming just for this walking trail. So we're going to make part of this area look like a nice car park, and the other part of it is going to look like the natural apex of this little hill here with a bit of nature on it. And we've also got our walking trails that are extending from the end of each car park. We've got 2 entrances here. I want to spend a little bit of time here to make this car park look somewhat custom, so we're going to make it fit nice and snug into the triangle space here that I've created for it, which means I have to make a couple of little dummy car parks here with decals and whatnot, and then I can put a nice fence around this and then put a couple of, I think they're American elm, the trees. They're really beautiful trees. I put those along the fence line as well. So the last move I want to make to finish off this area is I want to make these citizens pay to use it. So we are going to introduce this as a park area in game to generate a little bit of cash. Even though I've got a few little cheaty mods on to help me build, I am still trying to play this game. I would definitely prefer if the city was making money, for instance, because it means that I've sort of got things, or the ratio of things right. We need the right ratio of industry, we need rail to bring it in if we don't have it being created in game, and yeah, generally if we're in the green, the balance is somewhat right. And the likes of these little park areas here are definitely going to help us get that balance right. I actually had to spend a little bit of time once I got the save working to come back and make sure all of my industries areas were making money again, because some of them were bombing out, and I've managed to fix them all up, which is great. And even the airport's making money. That's right, it made $21 last year, which is fantastic. So anyway, we finish off the park by chucking in a couple of entrances. We've got a main one and then a side gate. And I decided to call this park Bridge View Park because the view of the Golden Gate Bridge from this park is pretty second to none. So I think the best thing for me, apart from the way that it's all come out and what it's added for our citizens in game, is the small amount of props that I've used for the whole area. Apart from like bits of grass and things like that, there isn't many props in here indeed, and that's good for my frame rate. And what's good for my frame rate is good for the longevity of the series. I mean, I could have got really carried away in here. This is a large area we're talking about, and I am extremely fond of my props, so I was quite proud of myself actually. All I really add here is just a few tables and like direction signs, because we do have multiple walking trails here, and of course you want to know where you're going, especially if you're not a local. There's quite a bit going on in this area in real life, and there was a few different things I could have choose from to build here, but I've settled on this little wee marina. I guess the reason I chose this is because it was probably the most picturesque out of the things I was going to build. I think one of them was like an old dirty little port or something. I think this is much nicer. So we're going to use this nice little piece of land here that was sort of half terraformed like this from the height map when I began the series, and I line the inside of that with a nice stone key. We're going to have America's favourite down here, more car parks. They are going to surround one side of this marina. We're also going to sandwich in a couple of little cafes next to those car parks. And we are eventually going to have more entertainment and attractions down here, bringing more citizens in. So we do need more parking. I actually really wanted to bring like a light rail line down here to avoid all of this parking, but then I also wanted to keep it in line with the real life one somewhat. Obviously the real life version doesn't have any form of light rail down in this area at all, and in the end I figured it would kind of ruin the whole serenity of the area, so I went against it. And just as I speak of serenity of the area, let's finish putting in the 200th car park in the area. I'm getting pretty good at making these, and I want to make this one look a little bit more realistic, so we add in some darker pavement here and there just to make it look like it's got new patches on it. Then I can push around to the other side of the marina, or the city side of the marina, and we add a nice little walkway along here as well, although this one's a little bit more formal than the ones we've seen down on the beach. We've got some nice pavement here, some nice pavers and tiles down the side of it, and also there's some nice trees lining each side of the walkway. We've got this really cool and unique attraction down here in real life called the wave organ, and when the waves come in and lap against some of these pipes that are down here, it makes this really cool sound. And this was all by design. It was developed by a man named Peter Richards, and he got a stonemason and sculptor in who created it for him. So I'm definitely not going to go like for like with this area because there's a lot to it, but we're going to capture the basic vibe. So in terms of the shape, we've got different concrete terraces facing different directions, because we've also got a really nice view of Alcatraz from here. I'm also going to try and use some of these concrete terraces to strategically hide one of these entertainment cubes, because this is what we're going to use to draw people here. So this is basically going to be a custom attraction out here. So apart from those concrete terraces, of course we want some pipes. So I just used these chimneys here that I had in a pack and procedural objects them, and then sort of blow them up and move them around and put them into place where I think is appropriate. So it's looking pretty good, but I think it's looking a little bit too formal now at the moment as well. So let's try and introduce some rocks and some rugged looking nature around the edge of this. I'm using Vecchio Cristo's rocks here from the Steam Workshop initially, and then I think I raise up the terrain a little bit and then use Ronix's really cool beach rocks around here. They just look so good. I can't go past these. They're such an old asset, but they are so good. And they look especially good on terrain that's not too steep and it doesn't stretch them too much. So now we can finally move back to the start of the marina, or where we started the marina should I say, and introduce the pier around the inside. So even though this isn't going to be functional, we want to make it look like people have access to their boats, right? I mean, why would you park your boat here if you can't walk out to it? So in order to achieve that pier, I just use this network one here, which is really easy, and sometimes you can have trouble with the terrain glitching on the end of them. If that's the case and you're using them, you can also just use a terrain network to push the terrain back down flat. So the last thing that we'll do on that marina later on is install the boats, but for now let's push over here, and I want to install another park here, but this one's going to be a little bit different. And the first thing I'm going to admit is I didn't do any research about this area. I've gone completely off Google Earth, but I think this is a picnic area. Or maybe I really want it to be a picnic area. Either way, it's going to be a picnic area. We're also going to have a little playground here for smaller children, because this would be a really cool place to whip across the road and sit on the deck and have a coffee while the kids are over here playing on the playground, because the two are quite close and we've got a really good line of sight between the two. I want to put this little wee bandstand type memorial thing out here on the beach with some stairs going down into the sand. Maybe at high tide you can come and sit here and feed the ducks or whatever. But this area is actually modelled off one in real life, but in real life this is on the side of the marina. So I guess I've just moved this a little wee bit, and I actually really like how it fits here, and this is going to create one side of our park. So now we can push on to the actual picnic area, and from my observations it looks like there's these white rings on the ground, and maybe these are specific areas or picnic areas that you can either hire, or it's just like a law of the area that if you're in the circle, that's sort of your circle or picnic area. I don't know, I could be way off the mark here, but that's what I'm going for. So I'm trying to make those here in game. The decals weren't working for me, they weren't the right size, and we can't resize them with PO. So I had to get pretty crafty with a couple of round props here. I eventually find something that I think will do the trick and squeeze it in and under the ground and get it as close to ground level as I can. And I've got enough room here to fit about 8 or 9 of these little wee picnic areas in, and I want to leave a big grass area here as well, just for kids to play on and stuff like that. I finished the area off with some concrete fences here and there, and of course some nice big trees for some shade. And we've created a really nice little area here. This would be so cool. I picture myself sitting down here watching some of the boats leave from the marina. You can scan around 180 degrees and then see the Golden Gate Bridge right there in the middle of your view. Alcatraz Island as well. I mean, this would be such a unique area to come and chill at. And man, I gotta say, I love being able to do that with this game. There's more than enough mods out there to make this game look and play incredibly realistic. You only really have to look at the likes of $2.20 with Oceania and Palm's Time with Maya, for instance. These are incredibly realistic projects, and I think because we can make them so realistic, they do create a certain vibe if you can do it well enough, I suppose. So I do make a point to try and enjoy these moments here where I nail it and create that vibe, even if it's just for me. You know, that's alright, I don't mind. I'm sure I've well and truly missed the mark with a few of you here, but that's okay, I can live with that. I had a real blast building this, and that's really what it's all about. So you can see here I've introduced a couple more buildings. One of them is a yoga garden for leisure, and what I'm building right now is I've put a couple of vanilla clinics in here, and I'm going to make these look like the old Spanish style buildings to match most of the ones we put in the Presidio. We're still pretty much within the Presidio grounds here, and I kind of want to introduce a really old Spanish style building within the Presidio that was still being used today. So we're going to introduce these medical clinics down here, which my city actually needs down in this part, so it works both ways. But I want to make these look like they are old Spanish buildings that have been upgraded and kept and are still being used for a medical purpose today. So maybe this was an old hospital and all the wards were already set out, and maybe that's the reason why they've carried on using it. Next we're going to revisit the yoga garden I put down earlier, and I'm finally going to get to use the mod called Bob. Good old Uncle Bob. I've heard lots about this mod and I've used it for a while but not properly, so what we can do with this is we can use this mod to remove or change any prop or tree on any asset we want. That is just magic, isn't it? We did have a mod called Prop It Up that did this, but it was also a notorious crasher of the game. So this yoga garden is a vanilla asset and the trees are just horrid. They're the worst part of it, so let's change them with Bob. I put some much nicer ones in here. We've got some flowers and some palms, and it just looks much nicer when we replace these trees. We add more trees to the area as well, including some hedges here. Then we can push on to finishing all the roads in this area and all the intersections and making sure it all works and flows properly. So we've got a good handful of services down in this area now, so the idea with these roads is to try and make them efficient as well. I've put in a couple of flyovers or overpasses that lead directly to the highway interchange. I've also used the traffic manager mod to make it so these roads are only available to service vehicles. There is other roads in the area that are probably more appropriate for private vehicles, and this sort of makes the area a bit more efficient. Then I want to do exactly the same thing with the pedestrian paths. Let's hook them up, make sure they go to places that the citizens actually need them to, they're going to use them, put stairs in where we need to, and get all this area working properly. Well, we didn't manage to build all of the Presidio, which is a little bit disappointing, but I would rather focus on building what I can properly rather than racing through all of it. What I can say for sure is it has definitely added something to the city. The citizens have multiple new places to go and visit. I've finally finished that interchange coming into the city from the Golden Gate Bridge, and I think just visually, being such a huge part of San Francisco, it's going to be iconic, especially when we're looking like from a top view. And this together with what we've already built is really looking good. Thanks for watching, guys. I hope you've been enjoying the content. Give me a thumbs up if you have and you've enjoyed this one, and hopefully I'll see you on the next one. See you later.